It's how your partner was loved as a child will show up. I ran across this post right here that says how your partner was loved as a child will show up, how they react when hurt, how they communicate during conflict, and how they respond when they share your feelings. What do you guys thoughts about that? I'm gonna go ahead and go to Ella first. What are your thoughts, sir? You on mute just so you know.
You gotta unmute.
You, you got me. You got me. You got me now.
Yeah, we got you.
All right, my fault. My voice a little hoarse. I'm screaming from them damn Cowboys, man. Got my voice all gone. But anyway, that's definitely a factual statement. How the person was loved or lack thereof will definitely show up on how they deal with you, how they expect you to respond to certain things, how they respond to certain perspectives. They might take things further than it has to be. You having a different opinion of them may trigger something with their parents because maybe their parents was too hard on them. So whenever you might have a small gripe, they'll take it as a huge gripe. So how their childhood traumas will definitely show up in your communication style when talking to your partner. I definitely have seen that many times.
Okay. I'm gonna go to you, Tricker Mike. What are your thoughts about that? How your partner was loved as a child will show up.
Um, I mean, I don't think there's a truer statement as far as dealing with two people in a relationship. Upbringing is everything, and I guess one of the biggest uh, lessons from that is you really can't love them past it all the time. It's gonna show up, and that's why I always say the courting process is so important because, to be quite honest, there's no way that somebody should be able to hide these things from you before a serious commitment is given or marriage. And that's what, people are reporting that, hey, we got married, everything was good during the honeymoon phase, and they just switched up. Well, it should be extremely rare that somebody should be able to switch up on you. That's how well you should know them. I always say on the first day of your wedding, your spouse should get hauled out for murder. And you can tell right there from the description of what went down whether they did it or not. That's how well you should know that person. Right? Like that's not even their character. They don't even do that. They don't even frequent that part of town, that type of talk. So I don't feel like people know their partners that well, and they're not really looking for critical these critical things that'll show you that someone isn't ready and there are things they need to work through before y'all get in a committed relationship. So upbringing is everything. Like I said, you can't love them past it. You can definitely, befriend them, try to get them to seek help, but it's of the utmost importance.
I got a question for you, Trigger Mike. So if you guys never have any conflict and then all of a sudden you get married and then you get conflict and then you see a whole different side of that, would you suggest creating a conflict situation to see how they react?
So that's an excellent question, bro. So seriously, there are a lot of dudes that be like, well, she's just so pleasant. So the only thing you can do is change the environment, right? If a girl just seems to pass all the tests, she's likely just really mature. Like I think people who get into relationships late 30s, early 40s might experience that more, right? Or you've been married before, been in relationships before, but you need to be taking trips with this person. They usually can't survive the gauntlet, right? Take them around your family. And I mean the critical members of your family, mother, father, aunts, other married people. If you're trying to get married, take them out on a cruise, trips alone. People who usually cannot survive those things without a hiccup, right? Trips by yourself and trips with friends. So I would suggest just running that gauntlet of putting them in various different situations to see how they act out. If she ends up passing all of that and then ends up crazy, she's a sociopath and there's nothing you could do.
Hey, Trey, what are your thoughts about it, sir? How your partner was loved as a child will show up.
I think definitely, man. I think oftentimes people don't really, for one, diagnose it the way they should, and secondly, treat it the way they should, and oftentimes depend on the partner they with to kind of do that for them. And if that partner can't do it for them, then it's their partner's fault. At least that's how they rationalize it, and then move on to the next situation and just continue to make the same mistakes over and over and over and over again. I say it all the time, man. It's like, that's not your partner's responsibility. Everybody go through things, sure, but it's on all of us, especially as adults, to take that time, man, to really sort things out, and figure out why I react the way I react in certain ways, and like why my mind processes things certain ways. You know what I'm saying? So that way I could at least have, be able to acknowledge when things go left. A lot of people can't even acknowledge that, like I said, their upbringing is the reason for them behaving the way they do. And if you can't acknowledge it, and if you can't diagnose it, and if you can't treat it, what chance does your partner have? So that's the position that a lot of couples are in, because people, can't necessarily diagnose it the way they should. But in terms of the question, definitely it's gonna show. It doesn't matter how much you try to hide it, doesn't matter how far you sweep it under that rug. It's gonna be something that happens within that relationship that's gonna trigger a reaction that, again, the reason for it is your upbringing. So get that stuff sorted out, man, before you get into the relationship, not after.
But I got a question for you, Trail, and I'm just trying to walk people through this for the people that's watching and they may come into these situations. So let's just say that you've been married for 6-7 months and then something comes out. Let's just say that person was never called out on that, or they never realized that they had the issue, and it was because of their upbringing, and you call it out. Kind of walk us through that situation, because some people, when you tell them about themselves, they look at you like you the crazy one. So, like, how do you respond to something like that?
Well, first and foremost, man, all you can do is just point out the issues that you have with the situation. Point out, you don't necessarily got to diagnose it. I'm not saying you got to tell them, hey, nah, man, your issue's coming from here. But you can relate to them, hey, how those issues make you feel, one, and what those issues do to the likelihood of your relationship surviving if you don't get them sorted out. And you got to give it to people that cut and dry. Now, again, you can, man, we say this all the time. You can criticize especially a woman. You can criticize a woman whispering, and it's going to sound like you yelling at the top of your lungs in her ear in terms of what it is that you're telling her. So it's no perfect way to deliver it. It's no perfect way. 'Cause a lot of them try to hide behind tone. Well, no, you just got to tell me with the right tone. None of that shit matters. If it's something that she don't want to hear, and if it involves some type of, okay, I got to fix something about me, that's going to be a problem. But as a man, you can't let that sway you. To answer the question directly, it has to be, hey, I'm noticing this about you. And when you do that, it's making me feel this way, and it's making my mind go here. So you need to figure that out. You need to work on that. You need to do whatever. And again, give them a chance to. But if the behavior just continues and continues and continues, it's time to move around. Again, it is not your job to be their therapist. It is not your job to be their doctor. Like, your job is just like going to a car lot. I'm not going to a car lot and paying full price for a car that I have to fix the engine as soon as I drive it off of the lot. No, that's not my responsibility. My responsibility after I buy it, a flat tire, changing the windshield wipers, a light bulb go out, things of that nature. Maintenance is my job. Not bringing that car to the garage, having to break it down to bits and pieces and then put it back together just so it can function properly. It's not my job. And a lot of men oftentimes take on that task insanely, in my opinion. So I'm here to tell men, don't do that, ever. And women, don't do that, ever. It's on them to fix it. Doesn't matter how much you want to fix it for them. In reality, you can't. You can give somebody the blueprint. You can give somebody all the advice in the world, but it's on them to go fix it. It's on them to go do it. So don't, again, drain your cup empty trying to pour into somebody else. It's not worth it.
And that was going to be my next question, too, is this happened on the other side with men. Madden, go ahead and answer this question. How your partner was loved as a child will show up. What are your thoughts, sir?
I mean, I think that's absolutely correct. I'm kind of going with everybody else on this. It's how she was loved, how your partner was loved as a child would definitely show up, and how they weren't loved will definitely show up too. What type of environment they grew up in will definitely show up. Who was in the household, who was absent, who had your partner as a child, you know, or through adolescence the majority of the time? Was mama there the majority of the time, or was grandmama doing it? You know what I'm saying? Was daddy there all the time, or was he absent? What is she longing for? You know, what is she trying to get out of you? You know, is a big thing too, because she might have been loved a particular way, but she's missing a whole nother piece, which is a lot of times why they end up trying to date the type of men that they date, because it reminds them, or it makes them feel like that's what they're missing. You know, and that's why they need somebody else to kind of fill that void. But at the end of the day, as a man, a lot of times it's an impossible void to fill, because we don't always know exactly what needs to go there. You know, we're not psychiatrists. That's not our profession unless it is, you know. We just try to navigate the best way we can. Something Trill said that caught my ear was how he even changed. I can tell he's married because I can tell how he changed his language, even talking to a woman when he's saying that, hey, bring it to their attention, saying, hey, the way you said this made me feel like this, you know, really pushing the communication, the logic, and wrapping that with feelings and emotion to kind of hit home. I thought was really, really important, because you got to speak their language to really hit home, and get your point across.
All right. What are your thoughts, Luis?
Yeah, upbringing is really the basic foundation of a lot of people's life and how they start off. But I would say this: I think that the first 18 years is bad programming, right? And then I think it's up to you at that point as an adult to really dive deep and work on yourself and really work on those things of those insecurities, you know, those shortcomings, you know, why you might lash out, why do you communicate in the style that you do, or maybe perhaps why you run away from conflict, right? And I think that far too often that kind of work isn't really done up front. And I know one of the things that Trigger Mike had brought up is the vetting process. Like, how do you handle conflict resolution? Do you require space? You know, do you need time? Like, how do you kind of express yourself and communicate that towards your partner? And I think having that kind of conversation, and obviously, you know, they need mud on their boots. You know, you got to put them through that kind of trial so they, you know, you understand how they could handle conflict. But I think far too often people don't do that kind of introspection work inside to kind of handle that prior to getting into a relationship. And they just get on this hamster wheel, you know, going from the next person to the next person, experiencing the same outcome. So,
All right. Just to let go.
All right. The first thing I want to say is how your partner was not loved will show up, because that's, especially as men, that's what we usually have to be prepared for when we're dealing with women. And most, especially as Black folks, most women, not every, but most women usually have the same issue. Their mother traumatized them, gaslighted them, made them feel like they weren't enough, talk bad about their hair. The biggest enemy to the women that we're dating is their own mother. And the first thing you have to see is how, because she's not necessarily going to be able to articulate it properly, because she's certain sides of her that she just doesn't even know that is there, because she's pushed it so far back where she doesn't even know how she feels about certain things, because women suppress their trauma when things go wrong. We men deal with trauma, but not to the level of women. So the first thing you want to do is see if she's the extreme opposite of her mother. So the first thing I always try to do is find out how her mother was. And I want to see if she's like her mother or is she the totally opposite of her mother? Because it's going to be one of the two things. If her mother was like loud and extra whatever, is she real slow, like slow to respond? Or, is she just ready to just not talk about things? So if her mother is way like this and the girl that you're dating is way like this, that means she's the extreme opposite of her mother. And the reason why she's like this is because most women are going to say, I don't never want to be like my mama. So they turn around and be the extreme opposite of their mother. But when you're the extreme opposite of anything, that means that person was super cold, but you're super hot. So the girl that you're dating can actually be worse than her mother, because the opposite of hot is cold. The opposite of cold is hot. Both extremes are hurtful. You feel me? Uncomfortable. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is this woman an engager or is she a withdrawer during conflict? And these conversations can be had just simply, let me ask you a question. Are you an engager or a withdrawer? Oh, she's gonna be like, oh no, I don't like drama. I'm gonna withdraw. I'm gonna back off. I don't know. Okay, so is this extreme or is this subtle? Like, are you able to stay in a room when we get into it, or are you just gonna be like, I don't want to talk, leave me alone, go away? Now you're gonna be like, oh, this chick is super traumatized. Because if a woman cannot even engage with you when she's upset, that means her issues are so deep rooted where she can't even talk. Most women have trouble communicating when they get upset. And if you and a woman are getting upset, or if there's an issue and she can't even communicate with you, you don't have anything. So those are the things that I would break down, like from a conversational standpoint, before a problem happens. So that way you don't really have to wait for a conflict to happen, because she already told you. Because women, I'm not going to say they're very self-aware, but they've been through conflict so much, they know how they're going to act, and they'll tell you. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I see it.
All right. Eric, what are your thoughts, sir? How your partner was loved as a child will show up?
Well, I think that I think everybody hit it on the head. I think everybody's on point. I also believe that as people are growing up, let go, you hit it on the head. Like, there's a lot of opposites that happen as well when people are growing up, where they see something that their parents did and they're like, no, I will never do that. And sometimes that takes you to rebellion. And then it also takes you to a place whereas they have an extreme behavior that you have to deal with later. So I guess how they are brought up actually affects everything. But then it also affects how the other outside forces that they have that affect them, like, really has them act in a different way. Like, I think all of us have probably dated or been with someone who had this doggone thing where there's like, no, this thing happened in my family and I'm not doing that no more. So let go, I'm with you on that. And I think, yes, it has an effect, but it's just more than just mommy loved me, daddy loved me. But I think it's just how they saw life, their perspective, and how they dealt with it over time.